Some common Caesarisms that you will see throughout translating him are ellipses, which is when he provides a word, but then you have to supply it more than one time. So the example here is incolent, is to inhabit, and here it shows up here, but you have to include it here, and then you have to also include it here. So needing to repeat words that he only has once. Another example of ellipsis is lingua. He uses asyndeton quite a bit, so there's no conjunctions there. And then we've got this tricolon that you will see quite a bit of. Sometimes they're ascending, sometimes not, but he likes lists of three. And then the trickiest grammar aspect that you'll see quite a bit is that he will often leave out the antecedent of a relative pronoun. So with this one, you have to supply an ae, so those who are called. And that's something you will probably get used to after a while, but you'll have to watch out for. Here we've got some more examples, another example of a syndeton that we have, and another tricolon that we've got with these three ablatives of respect. And we saw those in Virgil, and we'll see them much more in Caesar. Keep your eye out for reflexive pronouns, and always just ask yourself, okay, here's a reflexive pronoun, what is the subject? And therefore, how am I going to translate the reflexive pronoun? And that takes a discipline, because otherwise sometimes you can get a little sloppy with that. I talked about the ablative of respect. Ablatives of separation can sometimes have prepositions and sometimes not. So the main way you're going to be able to tell is with the verb. But ab aquitanis is an ablative of separation, and ab belgis are here as well. And then remember that even though this is a singular verb, there can be multiple subjects. So, I mean, the one subject is Flumen, but there are three different rivers, the Garumna, the Matrana, and the Sequana. So very often, if you have a list of singular subjects, even though there's more than one singular subject, it often will have a singular verb. Caesar loves partitive genitives. He also likes to start sentences with partitive genitives. So, and you'll see that he has a lot of fairly common connectors. So he'll start a sentence with "of all these," which refers back to these that were mentioned in the previous sentence. Propteria quad is his way of saying because, or especially because, but you can just translate it because, but you're probably going to see it 6 or 7 times in the AP syllabus, so good to kind of get to know that. Here's another ablative of separation. This one has also a preposition a there. And then every once in a blue moon, he will use an adverb to modify another adverb. We don't see that a lot except for in Caesar, so just good thing to watch out for that. And that's one reason to kind of save the dinky words until last to fit them in. And then this is a huge one, odd plus a noun and gerundive. So there's 2 things you need to know about this. Number 1 is how to translate it. So literally this would be, for or towards the spirits to be effeminized or to be weakened or about to be weakened. But the way you're going to translate it is for weakening the spirits. So that's one thing. So you're basically going to take the gerundive and translate it like a PAP. The second thing to know is that 95% of the time, odd plus a gerundive phrase, and you'll find out it's also odd plus a gerund, will show purpose. I think one could argue that maybe, the things that the merchants bring in aren't necessarily the purpose is to weaken them, but in other cases it will definitely be a way to show purpose. But main thing is translate the future passive participle as a PAP. This is an example, and we'll see a few more of just keep track of pronouns. I mean, here these 2 relative pronouns refer to Germani, so it's not too tricky, but very often he will use kind of the same pronouns to refer to different entities, so you just have to keep really close track, and I recommend you label the pronouns, like G for Germanis, just to remind yourself. This is an example where he starts with a relative pronoun, but you could translate that as a demonstrative. So literally this is from which reason, but we would say from this reason or for this reason. So if he starts a sentence with a relative, if you want to translate it as a relative which, and that's fine, but if it makes more sense for you to translate it as a demonstrative, that's fine as well. Here's another ablative of respect with respect to courage. And then remember that cum clauses can be followed by indicatives. They don't have to be subjunctives. Usually the indicative cum clauses are more definite. So subjunctive, it's often whenever, whereas indicative, it's like when, there are specific times. Here is an example of an ablative of separation without a pronoun, without a preposition. And then this is a good example of keeping track of what the pronouns and the adjectives stand for. So it's a good idea to kind of keep up with, okay, what do these represent? And remember, just like reflexive pronouns, reflexive possessives, you have to look at the subject in order to translate them. And I guess that you could think of this ipsi as going back to Helvetii, but it also could just be its own pronoun. Here's another partitive genitive starting a sentence. Of these, one part. So of the things that were mentioned up above, one part. He will use impersonal verbs a decent amount, and especially as verb of mental activity and indirect statement, so watch out for that. Here's another example of a syndeton. We've got this, no conjunctions between these verb phrases, and here's another tricolon as well. So, and then throughout these last few slides, keep track of the geography and the directions. You're going to learn the words for north, west, and east, and it's good to have a picture of these places in your mind so that you can imagine it as we go on with the translations. Another example of a partitive genitive, from the extreme borders of Gaul. Watch out for deponent verbs. He uses a decent amount. I mean, all Roman authors do, but you just got to keep an eye out for them. And then again, more geography and more directions, north and east. And also know that the lower part of this river is actually the northern part. So that's another thing to kind of make sure you're reading the commentaries about this. And then one thing that you'll see is that ad, we're used to translating it toward. It also can mean near. And then still more geography. The ocassum solis is the falling of the sun. That's the west. We've got more north. So just have a picture in your mind of the map.